Hidden Gems, Episode 17, Journey into the Unusual. Welcome to Hidden Gems, a board game podcast where we review unusual, forgotten, and underappreciated board games. We're your hosts. My name is Chris.
I'm Jason.
And this is Bill.
Welcome back, Bill.
He's back.
Thank you for having me back.
My nemesis has returned. Back by popular demand, I might add. I don't know if you're aware, but you are quite popular amongst the BGG Guild members.
The three people that's out there listening.
You post your novels in there every once in a while.
Yeah, your overly verbose mini reviews that you get in when you can't be on the podcast.
That's
People
true.
just eat them up, man. They love you. They want more Bill.
Oh, wow. It is an outlet for me sometimes when I'm not working. I could spin my chair around and do a brain dump to procrastinate on working. But yeah.
And talk about all the ways that you disagree with me.
Oh, that's true. Exactly.
Usually.
It's like all the ways that Chris is wrong.
That's right.
What have you been up to, Bill, since the last time you've been on the show?
Gosh, when was the last time I was here?
Stephen Dora.
The
Tonga Bonga fiasco.
Oh, exactly. Truly. Another instance where Chris was totally wrong. Well, I've had my family infamous beach trip. I think I talked a little bit about that on that podcast. And there's 15 or 16 of us that go to the beach every year, all in the same house, ride waves all morning, and then come back and play board games in the heat of the afternoon and evening. To me, it's my favorite week of the year.
Looks super fun.
It is.
Sounds awesome.
Sounds great.
It was really great. So we had kind of a guest star. Have you guys ever heard of Kishibashi?
Never in my life.
No.
Never. Kishibashi is famous in the circles that I guess he is. He's a violin player. Dolby Atmos came to him to create a demo CD for you. If you've spent money on your high-end stereo equipment, you get a CD from him to test the stuff out.
Huh.
Anyway, he's dating my niece, and he came down.
No way.
Yes,
Wow.
He's into VR, and he brought his VR and played it. Gave us a concert on the back porch. Anyway, for those of you
I
guys,
thought you couldn't get more interesting, Bill.
So anyway, that was really super cool. But I will say we did a rerun of a couple of games that Chris totally trashed.
Yes, my shelf of loathing.
Self-loathing that I'm adding too slowly as Chris pans things and shoves them out the door. Let me start with Niagara.
Oh, boy.
We have fun with it. I think, to me, I'm all about the context, right? You don't take your kids to a scary movie. And for the context of our beach in a family setting with casual gamers, I think we enjoyed it. What is interesting, though, is we didn't play it a second time, so that might be telling. So we got that once. But
They were just being nice to you.
they were.
Did anyone fall off the waterfall?
Good question.
Yes, so that is a great question because we did house rule it that you didn't pay the gem if you fell off the waterfall. And so
People were taking more risks.
people take more risk, and you're incorporating that in the strategy, and it made the game more fun.
That's a good change.
Making it more playable. I think we found in one of our games when I think Jason went over the falls that you're just kind of out of the game.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
You're done at that point.
Right, exactly. So it made it much more fun.
Did the river ever deviate from right, left?
No, because it wasn't Jason pushing this. No, it did well on the alternating left and right.
That's a con for me, but anyway.
To me, it's consistent, and you just plan that into your strategy. So anyway, I liked it. And then the other, Tonga Bonga.
Boy.
I'm curious on this one.
Was really interesting. We did play it. I played the Chris strategy of playing
Walmart.
The Walmart strategy of paying low amounts of monies for crews, and I ended up winning. I think given there's probably 30 turns before the game's over, if you're making 2 or 3 coins on every one of those 30 turns, it puts you right up there in the running. And I didn't make it to all the islands either. So
Yes.
I'm kind of with you on that one. It's super interesting to me to watch everybody talk about the finances of it afterwards because it gets everybody's wheels turning on how to make it work better.
And how they went wrong.
So you won without making it back to Tonga Bonga.
I did. I did not make it back. And I didn't make it to one of the islands.
Yeah,
So-
that's interesting. I do find that in that game, with people who are playing it for the first time, they tend to overbid.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the discussions of the people that were around me talking about how do you play the economics of bidding for people's dices, which I thought was kind of fun.
Did it get played twice?
It did not. The other one I want to talk about is also in my episode, there was a mailbag question that said, what is the game that everybody else likes that you really hate? And I said in that episode, Catan, and somebody wrote me into playing Settlers of Catan Star Trek. I don't know if you've played that one, but there's a twist in that you can hire characters like Kirk.
Yes.
right? That protects you from the thief. To me, that adds an interesting choice in the game and makes it really good because you can end up with a lousy draw or whatever at the very beginning and still be competitive by using those characters in a strategic way, I guess.
That's
anyway,
cool.
So.
Are you a Trekkie, Bill? You kind of look like a Trekkie. You're a Trekkie, aren't you?
Yeah, I would say I am. When Star Trek Next Generation came out, my wife and I were newly married, and we would watch it. That was in the days that you probably don't remember this, where you had to get in and like see Thursday night at 8 o'clock to actually watch it all the way through. You didn't have this binge watching thing that you have these days. But.
I do remember watching Next Generation with my parents when I was like in 5th grade, I think. they did like that show.
It was a good show. Whippersnapper.
We love Bill. As hard of a time as we give Bill about his age, I hope he knows we're joking.
Speak up, Sonny. I can't
It's all in good fun. I always love Bill's perspective on things.
Yeah, it's good to have you back.
Yeah,
Thank you.
welcome
It's good
back,
to be
Bill.
It's good to be back.
Well, speaking of being glad to have Bill's perspective, I'm really excited that it just so happened to line up that Bill was on this episode with what I'm going to talk about in our banter section tonight, because I think that Bill might have some really interesting insights to this and maybe have played some of these games. So I recently came across a really interesting top 100 list that I highly recommend people check out. You can find it easily on YouTube. It's called Mike Selinker's The 100 Games You Absolutely Positively Must Know How to Play. So this was a presentation that he did at PAX East in 2015, actually. So this is a fairly old video, but still very relevant. Do you guys recognize the name Mike Selinker? Do you know who this is? You'll know who it is, Bill.
I've heard the name. I don't know that I could.
Vaguely, but I mean, it's those brain cells that died in college, so maybe.
So Mike is one of the OG board game designers. I would consider him an OG nerd, and he would probably take that as a compliment. He's just one of these guys that's been deeply embedded in the nerd culture for years and years and years. Him and James Ernest, Andrew Looney, people like that of Looney Labs, these are the kind of people I'm thinking of. And he is known for designing Betrayal at House on the Hill.
Oh, yes.
Which I know you like.
I do love that game.
Yeah. Lords of Vegas, which he co-designed with James Ernest. Pathfinder Adventure card game, and he actually co-designed Axis and Allies.
Oh, wow.
I did not know that. I actually just recently discovered that, but he's listed as a co-designer in Axis and Allies.
That's wicked.
So with this top 100 list that he made, he described it as games that he thinks everyone needs to play at least once. And I kind of took that to mean games that he considers to be the most important games ever designed, but he said that they weren't that, but that's kind of how it comes across, but it's not his 100 most favorite games. Okay, it's ones that he thinks people should play at least one time. It's also important to note that this is not just board games. It's board games, electronic games, video games, computer games, and tabletop RPGs. Okay? Mm-hmm. So, of the 100, I've played 56 of them.
Oh, wow.
Okay? Cool. Now, that doesn't sound very good, but I will tell you that some of these games are very obscure. So, I've listed out 5 of them that I most want to play of his top 100, and I would be curious to know if you have played them.
Okay.
I wonder if you have played some of these.
Okay. All
Okay.
right. We'll see.
I probably have not.
So I don't think you have, but we'll see. All right. So this will be fun. This is minor spoilers, I guess, for his list, but I highly recommend checking out all 100. But these are the 5 that I most want to play. All right. Number 1, Zork. Do you know it?
Of course I know it.
Okay.
So for last Christmas, I created a text adventure.
No way.
Yes, when my kids played, our kids would go through our house and they would see things in the room, and through the text adventure, something would happen, and then they would run to the room and then search that room for
is crazy.
something.
So you designed one.
I designed one. Yeah, there's actually a really cool program out there that makes it really easy.
That is cool.
I
So
should have it on this laptop.
for people who don't know or haven't picked up on it yet, as Bill was saying, it's a text-based adventure RPG type game where the text will give you a scenario or describe a setting or a room, and then you type in the verb noun command, and something may or may not happen, and you're trying to navigate through this story. I don't know what Zork is, but the only reason I know what this is if you've ever seen the movie Big with Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
He plays one of these games as a kid at the very beginning of the movie.
Well, yes and no.
Okay, so you know that. Yeah, okay. I knew you would be all over this.
Yeah, because that one actually had graphics to it, right?
Right.
Yes, because this one had no graphics. It was just all words, right?
So there are 3 of these. I'm going to play these. Have you finished them?
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's funny is there are references to these games that appear in other games. Have you heard about Gru before as a monster?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah, so that was in Zork.
Okay.
The Gru is the thing that gets you in the maze.
Yeah. So researching this, one thing I found out, and I knew this, I didn't realize this was what it was, but in Call of Duty Black Ops, the video game, at the start of the game, you're in an interrogation chamber, like when the start screen is up, and you can escape out of that chair and walk over to a computer and play Zork in a modern video game.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So it's embedded in popular culture. Again, I've not played it. It was designed in 1980, so I was born in 82. It was a little bit before my time, but I really want to give it a try. Looks cool.
Yeah, well, it's definitely dated, but yes, I mean, as far as getting the history of gaming, that is one that I agree everybody should play that.
I'm checking it out. All right, you're 1 for 1, Bill.
Awesome.
All right, the next one, The Fool's Errand.
I have to say I don't know that one.
Okay, so this is from 1987. Do you know this, Jason? Have you heard of this?
I don't.
So it's a puzzle game, and this is Mike's most favorite puzzle game, he said, which is a big compliment because if you don't know, Mike Selinker is also a big puzzle designer. Okay, so he's really into these puzzle games. Obviously, 1987 on computer, and it's broken up into a storybook that's 5 chapters long, and each one is named after a tarot card, and it's just a huge assortment of puzzles where you're trying to solve to get through this or survive this book.
Kind of sounds like those puzzle books that you can buy.
Right.
Like Journal 29.
Journal 20. I'm playing it right, doing it right now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
in
hard.
electronic format. So that was one he recommended.
Oh, very cool.
Number 3, you're not going to have played. I've not played it. I've heard of it. It's a board game called Falling from 1998. It's ranked 19,149 on BGG. Okay.
Wow.
But it's designed by his buddy James Ernest. It's a weird theme, but basically everyone is free falling, and your goal is to be the last person to hit the ground. I know that sounds weird, but basically you're like...
It's a little morbid.
It's a little morbid. It's a little weird. It's a real-time game where you're dealing cards out. You have a dealer, and the dealer is steadily dealing cards to everybody, and you're trying to play cards to basically maneuver yourself to where you're the last person standing or the last survivor.
Does he offer a logic on why he thinks this is an important one to play? Or just says
he did, and I cannot remember exactly why he said. I have to say he's probably a little biased because it was by James Ernest. They're best buddies.
Right,
but it's certainly an unusual theme, and I have heard of this game before. I have heard of it. I've just never played it.
It says the object of the game is to hit the ground last. It's not much of a goal, but it's all you could think of on the way down.
It's super weird. Apparently a game lasts 45 seconds. It's a filler. You just play it over and over again while you're waiting for people to show up. All right, number 4. Johann Sebastian Joust.
No.
No.
I played Joust, but I don't know Johann Sebastian about. That's crazy.
I figured, given how much you love Oculus, which is not an Oculus game, but how much you enjoy that kind of thing, I thought you might have. So this is a game that you play with motion controllers. So you know those little wand controllers with the orb on top?
Yeah.
So the way it works is everybody's holding one of these motion controllers, and music by J.S. Bach is playing in the background, and your controller is motion sensitive to how quickly the music is playing. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to knock other people out. So when the music is playing slow, you're moving very slow, because if you jostle that controller too much, it'll light up and you're knocked out. So people are trying to reach out and hit your controller while you're moving. But when the music speeds up really quick, you can move fast. And so people will lunge at you and try to hit your controller because it will tolerate more movement. So you can move more quickly. It's like a real-time tag game called Johann Sebastian Joust.
Wow.
Designed in 2013. You can see why I haven't only played 56 of these, right? They're kind of unusual.
Yeah.
Some are not, but some are. And then the last one, Ingress.
That's familiar to me, but
Do you know what this is?
I can't recall.
So Ingress is an augmented reality mobile phone game.
Oh, no.
So it's kind of like a combination between Pokemon Go and geocaching.
Oh, wow.
So you download this app and you're divided into 2 teams, the Enlightened and the Resistance. And basically everybody in the world who is playing this game is playing a giant game of area control over the surface of the planet.
That's awesome.
So you have these locations scattered through all out the world that are designated as portals. And basically you're trying to hook into these portals and reverse them to your control of your team with resonators is what they call them. And then if you link 3 portals of your color together with keys, it blocks off an area. And this could be anywhere from meters to several miles where you're gaining control of territory for your team. And it's an augmented reality game with some puzzles and things thrown in there too, apparently.
That's pretty wild. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Those were the 5, and I have one honorable mention just to shame myself publicly. Again, as I mentioned before, I was born in 82. So I was ushered into the console gaming era with the Nintendo, Super Nintendo. It was just my generation. I didn't play a lot of PC games growing up. And one that was obviously on the list that I really need to play is Civ.
Oh my gosh.
Never played Civilization before.
Wow.
I played the board game, Advanced Civ and Civ several times, but I've never played Civ on the PC.
Yeah.
You like Civ?
I love Civ. Oh, well, it depends. Like, you've got 1 through 6 now, right?
Right.
And loved 1 because it was 1. 2 fixed it. It fixed a settler issue. 3 wasn't as good. I think 4 is good. I mean, anyway, you can do a Google search and see which of the Civs to actually buy now if you want to go back in time.
Gotcha.
But yeah, anyway, yes, I love Civ.
That's
lots and lots of hours on Civ.
I want to try. Have you played Civ, Jason?
A little bit. I wasn't totally into it, but I've spent a couple hours on it. Okay. I couldn't tell you which version. We played old Mac games when I was growing up, and so if it was on there, I probably played it.
Gotcha. Yeah, well, check out this list. I think it's great. He talks about a lot of games that will obviously be on the list that you'll recognize, and some where you're like, didn't really see that coming. And see if you played more than 56.
Right.
That's my number, so see if you can beat that.
Well, I want to say I appreciate you calling out the year 1982, because now I have a year in my mind to say this is when the world went to hell in a handbasket.
That's exactly right.
Because that's the year when kids started playing consoles instead of having to play on computers and having to hack them or program them or do something to actually get to a game that you could actually play. So once it became really easy, and it's kind of funny because I see that now that kids want to play games and it's just pop in a DVD or download it online or whatever, and it's just so easy.
Yeah, I just barely missed the PC thing, and admittedly, my parents, I love them; they're great people, but they still can't turn on a computer. So I didn't really grow up with a computer in the house, and so I just missed all that.
And so you got it genetically and environmentally.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
All right, yeah, check it out. It's cool.
Well, Chris, as usual, we've got another cocktail here, and like last time, it's got another egg white in it. So you're never going to convince me to like egg white drinks. But
last one had an egg yolk in it.
Oh,
so it's understandable. This one is an egg white, though.
Well, tell us about this one.
Yeah, so as I mentioned in the title, we're talking about unusual games today, and I whipped out my most unusual cocktail that I know how to make. And I've made this one several times. Most people, unless you're a baby like Jason and can't handle egg in your drink, like this drink. And I will say, of all the drinks that I've talked about or taught how to make on this one, this is one that if you're really trying to impress your friends, this would be one to do it. And it's really not that difficult, with one exception that I'll talk about in a second. So the drink I made is the Ramos Gin Fizz. This is a classic cocktail. It was invented in 1888. So this is an old drink, very well known. And the way that you make it, there are a lot of ingredients here. I'll read them slowly because really you should try this drink if you're interested. 2 ounces of gin, 1 ounce of lemon juice, half an ounce of lime juice, 1 teaspoon vanilla extract, 2 to 3 dashes of orange flower water, which you can get easily, like a Whole Foods or something like that, an egg white, 1.5 ounces of heavy cream, and a tablespoon of sugar. So what you do with these ingredients is you shake them, and you shake them for a long time, 3 to 4 minutes at least. Okay.
Wow.
So when you see the presentation of this drink, it has a really big foam top on it. Sometimes it'll go about 1 inch above the top of the highball glass, and that's because you shake it. Actually, the original recipe called for it to be shaken for 12 minutes.
Wow.
And so this guy, his drinks were so popular, he had 20 bartenders employed that all they did was shake these drinks because it took so long. Right.
I might go to the Home Depot and get the paint shaker.
I'm telling you, it's a workout. I mean, I work out a lot, and it's a workout. Try shaking a drink for 4 minutes. I mean, it's no joke.
Then it gets a really thick cream on the top, and then you try to drink it, and you dump it all over yourself.
It just busts through.
Which may or may not have happened to me a couple minutes ago.
Yeah, it's a really cool presentation. Classic cocktail. Oh, and once you've poured it in the drink, you top it with club soda. That's what causes it to get very fizzy on top. So
Well, I will say I like it. It is funny because it is like it's got the snowpack on the top that you do have to get through, but that's delicious. And then once you make your hole down to get to where the drink is at the bottom, it's like a very citrusy, ornery. It's delicious.
I feel like it tastes like a key lime pie.
Oh yeah,
almost.
Yeah.
If you like key lime pie, you would like
Yeah.
this drink a lot. I think
that was Katie's birthday cake this weekend was key lime pie.
Nice.
It was, so you're right. It's very similar.
Making
to that.
gin fizz for Katie, man.
There you go. She would love that.
Awesome.
Well, this week we're talking about unusual games.
That's right.
So we've talked about the underappreciated and the forgotten. So it's on to the unusual. What do we got in stock this time, Chris?
Yeah, so wanted to try to talk about some games that have either really unusual mechanisms or really unusual themes. And I think this is a good topic to talk about because I do feel like, at least since I've been in the hobby, and I would be interested to know y'all's thoughts about this, the board game hobby does tend to get into ruts. Maybe ruts is not a good word. Maybe a better way to phrase it is that I think publishers tend to jump on things that are popular and that they feel like will sell, which I feel like tends to generate ruts. Like Lovecraft and Cthulhu gets really hot, and every game is about Cthulhu, or zombies, or bees. Bees, for whatever reason, have been really hot lately. You never really know what the next trend's going to be. Farming, whatever. But it takes a lot of guts, I think, for a publisher to be like, you know what, screw it. I'm going to break away from the mold and take a chance here on something unusual, whether it be a theme or a mechanism, and try to do something different. I mean, I appreciate that.
Oh, yeah. It was funny. In computers, I see that all the time where you end up with like a first-person shooter or a strategy game. There's like 3 different genres everything seems to fall into.
Right.
And, I mean, now, in board games, I guess it kind of falls in the same camp. Whatever gets popular is cranked out.
Yeah, I find as I get older, I crave new experiences. The standard thing I've experienced before, I just want it less and less, which is probably a lot of the genesis of this podcast, right? We're kind of bucking against the trend, not because we want to be hipsters and cool, but just kind of tired of...
It's just fun to find that new thing that's like a new experience that you haven't seen before.
Right, exactly. And that's what this episode is all about.
Well, we'll see if these new experiences are any good, eh?
Maybe there's a reason why publishers don't do this.
I was going to say, you tick the box on unusual on this one for sure.
Yeah, we'll see what happens.
Well, let's get into the games.
Let's do it.
Here, where space is endless and time is precious, you face the challenges of a true space commander. From the bustling hub that is your control center, you coordinate your planet's production, transport, and demand. The catch is, each of your actions require the flip of 1 minute sand timer, of which you only have 2. You have exactly 30 minutes to manage as many deliveries as possible, while simultaneously the other players do the same. So keep a cool head and your communication channels wide open to arrange opportune deals with each of them.
Nice.
Good job, Bill.
What happened to the Captain Kirk? You wimped out.
I did wimp out. I
was looking forward to time and space.
Yes, that's true. I did try it, and my Captain Kirk really sucks. So, anyway.
I like
maybe
it.
next
Good
time.
job, Bill.
All right, thank you.
All right. Time and Space, also known as Space Dealer, published in 2013 by Eggert Spiele, Pegasus Spiele, and Stronghold Games. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 5,038. Designer of this game is Tobias Stapelfelt. This guy has one other notable design, which will probably show up on this podcast at some point, and that is the game Newland, which I actually have right up there. I was actually looking at it just a second ago.
Yeah, I've heard of that one.
Yeah. Really want to get this reviewed. It's a tile laying worker placement civilization building game, as crazy as that sounds. It looks fascinating. Really want to give that one a try. Doesn't get talked about very much, but I've heard it's quite good. So with Time and Space, I heard about this game from a YouTube contributor called The Discriminating Gamer. So I'm really happy to be able to talk about this guy, Cody at The Discriminating Gamer. I think he's got a pretty solid channel. If you've never checked it out, he's worth checking out. A lot of his content is on war games, but he covers a lot of other games as well, like Time and Space. And he's a pretty funny guy. I think he's got good quality content. They do a lot of musical stuff like we do, so check him out. Discriminating Gamer is pretty good. All right. Brief rule summary of Time and Space. Oh boy, how to explain this game.
It's a weird one.
These are going to be hard. Bear with us, folks. All 3 of these are pretty tricky because they were just so unusual. So Time and Space, in its simplest form, is a game of contract fulfillment in real time with sand timers. 1 minute sand timers, to be exact. So what you're doing is you're piloting your ship around space, trying to produce certain goods cubes to satisfy contracts that your opponents are putting out to be satisfied in order to score victory points. That's the general idea. So the way the game is set up, the board is a circular board, and every player will have a home planet in front of them where your spaceship will take off from. And then going out from your home planet will be wormholes, which are basically connections between your planet and moons that are orbiting in the galaxy. And then from the moons, you can either travel to other moons or you can travel to your opponent's home planets where you will satisfy contracts. The way that you move your spaceship in this game is very simple. As I mentioned, you're going to take a 1 minute sand timer, and what you're going to do is you're going to flip that sand timer over and you're going to place it on your spaceship running. Okay? When that sand timer runs out, at any time after that, you can lift that sand timer off, and when you do, you can move your spaceship forward to the next destination, whether that be a moon or a planet. Now, in addition to piloting your ship, you also have a command center where you're going to be doing various actions. There are 4 different things you can do in your command center. You can produce goods. The reason why you want to produce goods is you need cubes to satisfy contracts. Contracts are very simple. For example, one might be 1 blue good. So there are 4 different colors of goods, blue being one of the colors. If Jason puts a 1 blue contract out, if I travel to him and I give him 1 blue cube, I satisfy that contract. Very simple. So on my command center, on a production zone, turn a sand timer over. When it runs out, I can make a cube. Once I've made the cube, I have to be able to transport it. That's another action space. If I flip the timer over on there, once it runs out, I can move that goods cube to a transporter. Once a goods cube is on a transporter, when I visit an opposing planet, that will allow me to deliver that cube and satisfy that contract. Third action, putting contracts of your own in your command center. Turn a timer over. When it runs out, you can put 1 contract out. But what's interesting is when you place a contract for your opponents to fulfill, it must cover something useful to you, whether it be a production space or a transporter space. And then your final action is you can upgrade your command center. So when you travel to moons, you can get upgrade tiles, which you can overlay in your command center, which improves you. So for example, you can make your production centers, instead of just producing a blue cube, you can make a blue and a gray cube. And then you could upgrade it again, and it can make a blue, gray, and a yellow cube every time you run the sand timer. That just gives you a general idea of how the game plays. Lastly, we need to talk about scoring, because this is very, very important. And if you don't hear anything else, hear this, okay? So the way scoring works is you add up the face value of all your contracts. So a contract can be 1, 2, or 3 cubes of a single color. So for example, let's say I did 1, 1, 1, 2, and 1, 3 of blue. That's 3 plus 2 plus 1, so a base of 6. And then you will multiply that by the number of players you got those contracts from. So let's say between those 3 tiles, I got them from Bill and Jason. So that would be 6 times 2 different players. That will be 12 points. If, okay, and this is the important part, if I also got all of my blue contracts either fulfilled or at least down into my command center. If I didn't get all the blue contracts into play of my own, all of my blue contracts that I got from other opponents are worthless. I hope that makes sense. Okay? That's pretty much it. Everybody will tally up their score at that point. Highest score wins the game. That's generally how you play Time and Space.
Did you say that it's 30 minutes on the clock?
I did not. That's a good point that I left out. So we're on a 30-minute running timer. So once the hourglasses begin to get flipped, everybody is taking their actions simultaneously as fast as they can flip over hourglasses. There are no turns here. And once the 30 minutes are up, you'll tabulate points at that point in time. An important point. Thanks, Jason. All right. Easy lead in here. Obviously, sand timers are fairly unique. So not totally unique. Just in recent years, a couple of games have used this mechanic.
Kitchen Rush.
Kitchen Rush, yep. Rush MD, which is also in that family of sand timers. They're cooperative games, though. There is one competitive game that I know of that uses sand timers as well, and it's called Tamsk. Have you heard of this?
The name rings a bell, but I can't place it.
Yeah, so this is a very obscure game that I'd like to cover at some point if I can find a copy. It's actually in the, well, It used to be in the GIF series of games, those abstract strategy games, like GIF, Devon. Well, it was replaced by another GIF series game called Czar. It used to be in the lineup at some point. It uses sand timers as well. But all that to say, it's pretty unique. So my question for you would be, did the mechanism work for you? Did it feel like a good mechanism? Did it feel gimmicky? Did it feel fiddly? Was it hectic enough? Was it too hectic? How'd you feel about these running timers in the game?
Yeah, personally, I really liked the timer mechanic. I thought that it made you have to think forward and try to make those flips as efficient as possible. Anytime a timer runs out and you're sitting there trying to figure out what you need to put that timer on, you're wasting very, very precious time, right? I thought that puzzle of trying to figure out, okay, well, I've only got 40 to 50 flips of the timer if I'm being extremely efficient.
Right.
So how am I going to spend those, and how am I going to chain all of these different things? Because it's a process, right? You have to produce the goods, then you have to get them on the transporter, then you have to make sure your ship's in the right spot. And you can find yourself stuck in these positions where you've run out of timer and you need to do that action, but you can't do that action because you haven't produced the goods that you need in order to do it. And so, yeah, I thought that puzzle of trying to figure out how to get everything lined up and try to be as efficient as possible, I thought that was really fun.
Yeah, it was really cool. And when you put your timer on your ship, it has a really cool pocket where you slide your timer in and then you move your ship. Just the visual of your timer actually being in the ship and moving it that way, I thought was really cool.
It's cool. I agree with you. I thought it was really cool as well. I agree with both of you. I thought there was a really nice balance between being fast, like Jason said. Every second that you waste, you're kind of falling behind, right? But, and I've experienced this numerous times, if you move too fast and you flip your timer, once your timer goes down, you cannot move it. And there's nothing worse than after the timers are flipped and you're sitting and thinking about what you're going to do next, and you're like, crap, that was stupid.
Oh, yeah.
That was a bad move. And now you're just sitting there watching it run as you can do nothing.
Right.
Until it runs out, realizing that you've made a bad move and you're wasting more time if you had maybe just taken 5 more seconds to make the optimal move, but you feel the pressure to move quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're falling behind your opponents if you're not moving fast. It's cool in that way for me.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is that not only are you trying to chain your own actions, but you have to be paying attention to what every other player is doing at the same time. And so the game is constantly changing based on what other contracts are available. What contracts does Chris have on the board? Where is Bill going right now? Where he's going to steal a contract before I can get there. And you're so focused on your own board and making sure you're being efficient that if you're not paying attention to what other people are doing, by the time those sand timers run out, whatever you were planning to do with them is gone.
Yeah, that's such a good point. So many times I'm like, okay, I've got a blue and a gray cube. Jason needs a blue and a gray cube. I start heading that way. I think I'm good. And then I look over and I'm like, crap, Bill has a blue and a gray cube, and he's going to Jason.
And his timer's half up already.
His timer's half gone.
Right.
And I'm like, crap. But I could have seen that had I been thinking. You would think with just 2 timers, you could keep up with it. And it is easy to keep up with it first, but the game does have a way of ramping up on you, especially when you upgrade your command center. It becomes more difficult to track what is going on in the game.
It is. And one of the interesting parts about it is the colors. There's only 4 of them, and it becomes really apparent in a 3-person and a 4-person game that it basically comes down to 2 colors are going to be the ones that are bid for and contracted by the time you get to the end of the game. In the last game that we played, I started with brown because to me that looked like it was optimal, and Jason was producing it, but 3 turns in, 4 turns in, everybody switched to gray. And so I ended up having a couple contracts that were kind of useless. It's an interesting dynamic of the game and the flow of how that works as well.
Yeah, I think you raise a good point.
Yeah, this has to be discussed.
This game is an open economy when you really boil it down. The best parallel I can think of is Container. Right, which is a classic, well-regarded game, but that also struggles with some of the same open economy issues. If you remember, you only score for a color if you manage to get all of them onto your board.
You have to get them down.
So you're basically forced to lock yourself in, and based on the amount of time that you have, you really have to focus in on 1, maybe 2 colors.
Right.
I would venture to say trying to do more than 2 colors is nearly impossible.
No way.
Right, I would too.
I totally agree. It was such a weird design choice. I swear for the life of me, I can't figure out why he chose to do it this way. Because there were times in the game, I remember my first play this, we were like 2/3 of the way through the game, and Jason was like, I've got yellow cubes. I really need yellow contracts. And you're incentivized to want to put out things people can fulfill so you can score. But I looked down and I was like, well, I don't have any yellow contracts. I'm not going to score any points on this. There's no point for me to help you in this way, right?
Or even if you do and you have so many of them to get out onto the board, it's just not realistic by the end of the game.
Right.
You're just not going to do it.
I'm not going to make it. So I was just like, no. And Jason, I remember, just found himself on the outside looking in because I think Bill and I were doing the blue-gray thing back and forth, and Jason was like, I've got yellow, and we were just like, well, we don't really care, you know?
Right. Because we're never going to get all our yellows off our board.
Right, and that was out of just bad luck that Jason just happened to choose to go for that color, and Bill and I were going after colors that were synergizing with each other.
Yeah, and you could
That's
argue...
so bad.
Right, and you could argue that, well, I should have foreseen that. Right, I should have seen that you guys were focusing in on those colors and avoided yellow. But it just so happened that the tiles that I was picking up were all producing a lot of yellow, right? So I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go for yellow. But the problem I see with that is that, like in one of the games we played, 2 of the colors, like you mentioned, Bill, never even came into the game.
Right.
Right.
And who wants to do that?
Because it's like, well, everybody is doing these 2 colors. Everyone is going to be only incentivized to put these 2 color contracts on their board.
Right.
So producing anything else is dumb.
It's losing.
Right? Yeah.
Right. And it's the same with 4-person game as well as 3-person, which is interesting because you would have thought that would bring at least another color in there, that you have an opportunity to find a 3rd person there, but it just doesn't seem like it makes sense to ever stray from the 2-color strategy.
Yeah, I totally agree. If you, at the start of the game, don't pick the right colors and everybody else at the table picks similar colors, you are already at a huge disadvantage because nobody's going to want to deal with you. And not to mention, I don't know if we made this clear, when you put those contracts out, they sit on useful spots on your board, right? They're covering up stuff you need. So if you put a yellow contract out and nobody's making yellow cubes, that thing is just going to sit there and hamper you for the whole game just because you picked the wrong color.
Right.
That's bad. That's
And you can't
terrible.
do anything about it.
Right.
There's no mechanic where you can scrap a contract or you can fulfill it in some other way for less points. There's nothing you can do about it.
Right, exactly.
Open economies are tough.
They are. They are. Tricky business. Any other thoughts, good or bad? We're ready to move on to final thoughts.
I think I'm ready.
I'm ready.
Let's do it.
All right. Jason, kick us off.
All right. Well, I think it was probably pretty clear when we started talking about this game that there are a lot of good things about this game.
Yeah.
Right? The unusual mechanic of the sand timers, the crunchiness of trying to figure out how to be efficient, but not so efficient that you miss opportunities. I really enjoyed that part of this game. When you explained the rules for the first time, Chris, I was like, this game is going to be awesome, right? And I even like the open economy, but the way this one works, it just kind of falls apart because of the way that it incentivizes players to focus in on a very narrow spectrum of goods, which by necessity blocks other players out, and not in a good way. I wanted to like this one. I had to settle on a 3 for it. I don't think that I would want to continue to play this game long into the future. It was a fun game to experiment with and to play a couple times and to get that experience of something new. And I think it fulfilled that goal.
Right.
But in terms of looking long term, would I want to continue playing this game? Probably not. And so for that reason, I settled on a 3.
Okay, I guess me.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny. I put something in your mailbag again that I'm feeling like I'm the kid in the back that's going, oh, with my hand up in the air saying, pick me. But the question I posed is, do you think that you're good at looking at a game and deciding whether you're going to like it or not? Is it going to be something that you're going to play for a long period of time? And I will say that this is one of those games on paper and looking at it, I thought I would truly love because of the dynamic, where the timers went, that it is kind of like a real-time strategy. To me, growing up with computers, you started with turn-based things all the time, which is like every other board game in existence is. And then you moved into real-time strategy. And this was like real-time strategy come to life in a tactile kind of way. And so to me, it was just hitting a lot of points I thought was going to be really cool. But for the reasons that Jason just said, it does kind of just fall apart. Very early, felt like I made a good strategic choice in the last game we played of playing the brown pegs. And by the time I got to the end, that just wasn't the right choice.
Nobody was going for it.
Nobody was going for it.
It's
and
dead color.
Exactly. Yeah. And so a third of the way through the game, there was really not any recovery strategy I think I could have made to get me back in the game.
And no fault of your own. It's just because the flow of the game went away from that color.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyway, I would say the same. I would give it a 3 as well, partly just because I think there's a magic here. It's got some charm to it, but I don't think I would be too excited to play it a whole lot more.
Okay. All right, so it's really fitting that we talked about Tonga Bonga tonight.
Yeah?
Because I'm getting strong Tonga Bonga feels for this game, too. And it's such a shame. Similarly to the way I felt about Tonga Bonga, the gameplay is fun for all the reasons that you both have already said. It's fun. It's fun to flip the timers and figure out how to be efficient and try to move fast and beat people to places. I enjoyed all of that. Unfortunately, for all the reasons that we've said, the scoring system just kills this game. Kills it dead. So much so, I cannot recommend this game. To me, this is why we have the one category. Like with Tonga Bonga, there were parts that I liked about it. I like parts of this game, but to me, this game is broken. This game has a problem from a design standpoint, and that being how that economy works. It just doesn't. And so for that reason, I have to give this game a 1 because I think it's flawed. I think it needs fixing. I do think it could be fixed, but that's not my job to figure out how to fix a game. I'm going to review it based on how it is now, and right now, it's a 1. To me, unplayable.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
I think that's valid.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
All right. Well, after all that, if we want to find Time and Space, where can we find it?
Yeah, so at the time of this recording, the only place that I know of that you can find this is on the BGG Marketplace. So there are 35 copies on BGG. If you are interested in giving it a shot, very reasonably priced. You can try it. Like I said, there's some cool stuff going on here. If you want to test our theories, give it a shot. You can find it on there pretty easily.
Well, those are our thoughts on Time and Space.
All right. Sidibaba and his friends are in front of the Thieves' Grotto. One of them approaches the large rock blocking the entrance to the cave and cries, "Open sesame!" With a deafening rumble, the huge boulder slides slowly to the side, revealing the entrance to a dark labyrinth. Sidibaba and his friends decide to head into the maze, dimly lit by the glow of their oil lamps. But what is the right direction to make off with the thieves' fabulous treasure? Hurry! Time is running out, for the leader of the thieves, who has become aware of the intrusion, has set off in pursuit.
Pitiful.
Awesome.
Pitiful?
That Open Sesame was sad.
Open Sesame.
Exactly.
You do it better.
Exactly. I've seen that flavor text. It's like in big words. I was expecting something really big from you right there.
All right.
Oh,
Well,
sorry, he's doing the last flavor text.
That's
so we
right.
can
Yeah,
comment.
that's right. Eviscerate me. That's fine.
I'm waiting
ready.
for your automaton voice. All right. Sidibaba, published in 2008 by Hurricane, designed by Parapau Listasaya, currently ranked...
May I interrupt you?
Yes.
So this designer is the designer of a series of games known as the 19XX series of games. Have you heard of these, Jason?
I haven't.
Okay.
19XX.
Yeah. 19XX. So there's only one of these that I'm aware of. It's called 1906 San Francisco. These are not like 18XX train games. There are 6 in the series. They're all named after 1900 something, like 1920 Wall Street, 1911 Edmondson versus Scott is another one. This series of games will probably appear on this podcast because pretty much all of them are in the top 4,000 and they're not talked about at all.
Yeah, never heard of them.
Yeah, they're worthy.
Okay.
Anyways, continue.
Currently ranked on BGG 8,288. So this is another unusual game like we've been talking about. I will do my best to explain it. This game is sort of happening in real time. I guess players are working together in this game to enter a cave. You can think like the Cave of Wonders in Aladdin. It basically looks exactly the same. To find a large chest of treasure, and optionally a few small chests of treasure if you manage to stumble across them. And then to get out of the cave before you run out of lamp oil and get lost in the dark and die, I suppose. One of the players in the game is going to be acting as the cave itself. So they're essentially acting in the role of like a DM.
Yep.
King of Thieves.
That's right.
The King of Thieves, that's right. And that player will be helping the team move through the cave by placing cards in front of a screen that show the group where they're currently located within the cave and what they would see from their vantage point.
Yeah.
For those of you of my era, that would be like you're playing the game Wizardry or Bard's Tale or Castle Wolfenstein, and you're looking at the screen, and this is exactly what those cards look like. So.
Yeah, you see a hallway straight in front of you, or you see a hall to the left or to the right, or you see a wall in front of you. Right?
And if you're of my era, if you ever played the Nintendo game Fester's Quest, you'll know what I'm talking about. If you go in a house, it does the same exact thing.
Is that right?
It's like a maze. Yeah.
It's hysterical.
I think it's important to explain how the DMing part of this game works. So the cave player has a large screen, and behind that screen they'll have a map board, which is a 6x6 grid that is in the form of a maze. That maze has 3 entrances and exits, and that player will choose any orientation of that board that they want, and they'll choose any one of the exits or entrances to start the group at. And then they'll have a little marker that they'll use to track the location and the orientation of the party as they move through the cave. So the rest of the players who are in the group are going to receive 3 lamp tokens each. And these lamp tokens they're going to spend one at a time to put 3 minutes on the clock, during which they can move as quickly as is possible to move through the cave and hopefully not get lost. So as the group is moving through the cave, if they encounter a chest, either the large or small chest, the cave player needs to announce this, and if the group walks over top of that chest, they'll receive treasure, and in turn order, players will select 1 token of the treasure that's available from that chest, which is tokens randomly drawn from a bag. These tokens have different things on them. Some of them are just straight points. Others are set collection, where you need to collect a matching token in order for it to be worth any points. One other factor is that each time a lamp runs out of oil, the cave player is also going to receive a token, which is randomly drawn off of a stack. And these tokens do a variety of different things that allow the cave player to, play various shenanigans on the group as they're moving through the cave. And this proceeds in this way until either the group manages to find, at the very least, the large chest, and manages to exit the cave through one of the available exits, or until all the lamps run out and the players get lost forever in the Cave of Wonders. And that's pretty much the whole game. It really kind of boils down to a game of memory, right?
Yeah.
Of being able to remember where are you in the cave, because obviously all of the hallways look the same, and so it becomes a game of memory and
Direction.
spatial awareness.
Right. That's a tough game to explain. And I think, just to reiterate some of the points you said, because I think it's very confusing, but there's a lot going on with this DM maybe trying to win, and there's a semi-cooperative nature of the players are trying to get through cooperatively, but they're also competing with each other, and there are all rules there. But basically the main idea of the game is the group is trying to navigate their way through this maze, trying to remember, have we been here? Have we seen this before? Have we gone this way? Find the treasure and navigate their way out.
Yeah, ultimately one player does win. Either the cave wins or one of the players in the group who manages to make it out with the most treasure. I didn't explain that part, but
really,
ultimately you're trying to get out of the cave and be
Right.
part of the group that survives.
Correct.
I will say, having read the rules, because I ended up playing it with my family after we played it here, that I was kind of surprised that it was putting the DM sort of in an adversarial relationship with the players. You, as the King of Thieves, the DM who's running the games, can win the game, which I was kind of surprised with, really.
Yeah, and you should be surprised. And I'm really glad you played it with your family and you read the rules yourself, because when I taught it to our group, I did not play it that way.
Right.
And I think that's the dungeon master in me. Understanding that this game, the role of the cave, in my opinion, this is my opinion, should be one of, you were there to facilitate the other people's fun, and you are not trying to necessarily win. Because I think if you play the cave obnoxiously and very competitively and you're trying to quote-unquote win, it can be very unfun, I think. Because as a cave, you want the boards that the players are seeing to be cycling quickly, right? You want it to be coming up there. You want them to be making decisions. I think if you're back there trying to figure out, how can I screw them over this time? This could quickly become terrible.
Yeah, it's interesting because the cave is the biggest bottleneck from a time perspective. In a game that's real time, as the cave player, it all comes down to the speed at which you can flip those tiles over, right? Because the group can't move forward until they see where they are, and you have a set of tiles that you have to find the right tile and place it down. Yeah, I feel like as the cave player, you have to be working to get those tiles out as quickly as possible. And it really kind of precludes you from having a lot of time to think about the other stuff. Plus, I don't know, there's something about one player who has perfect information playing against a bunch of players who have very imperfect information, who are figuratively and sort of literally in the dark. I don't know. It didn't seem fun to me playing as the cave to like just try to be as mean as possible.
I totally agree. I find it to be an annoyance for the reasons you just said, having that perfect information. To me, as a player, I could feel it would be annoying for the cave person to be like, oh, now the King of Thieves lands on you. I get to steal from you, you know? You don't see it coming, or, oh, I'm just going to take money from the people who are in the front of the line. It doesn't need to be there. You know what I mean? I just didn't want to do it. It just felt like it was a hindrance to the game, at least to me. I'd be interested to know what you think, Bill, when you were running it.
I feel like we've jumped to the cons already. I'm going to go back to what I think was good about it, because what I thought was really kind of cool playing the game was that my only close comparison is playing D&D.
Yes.
We used to get the graph paper out and stuff like that, and one of the sensations you don't get playing D&D is that feeling of being lost, right? And that spatial awareness. And this game gives you that in spades, which I thought was, in some levels, pretty cool. When you're wandering around trying to find something, like you're saying, have we been there yet? I recognize this kind of zigzag pattern. We're going across the internal part of the maze. I think we're back in that spot again. And oh, look, there's that empty chest we just opened a few minutes ago. Or is that a different empty chest? Because we've done two. So to me, that was kind of cool with the added of your lamps are running out, right? So there is that time pressure. I'll say that the treasures did feel kind of afterthoughty. They were kind of nice, and it was kind of fun to get them, but it wasn't super exciting, right?
Yeah, I agree with your thoughts about the enjoyment of navigating through the cave. I will admit, I was nervous about this game because I went on BGG. And if you click on the reviews, you can see short little snippets of what people have said about this game and why they gave it the number rating that they gave it. And a lot of people said, this game is impossible. You'll never find your way around. We never knew where we were going. You can't know how you're going. Very declarative statements about how you cannot navigate this. You're just guessing. I did not experience that in the groups I played with, and especially as the cave. There were many times people were like, well, if we turn around and then we step forward, we'll be back on that hallway we were on before. And they were right. You can figure out where you're going in this map. That doesn't mean that it's easy, but there were definitely times where you're like, I definitely know where we are. And that's fun.
Yeah, I think that was something that I was thinking about when I was thinking through my notes for this show. Spatial awareness is not something that comes naturally to everyone, right? Some people, it clicks, and for other people, they're like, forget this. I have no idea where I am, right? I think that the people who do have that ability can really enjoy this game. But I think a downside to that is that for the people who that doesn't click for them, the game will end up in an alpha gamer quarterbacking scenario every time, because they're like, well, I don't know where we are. I guess we'll go this way. But somebody's going to be like, oh, no, we're in this exact spot, and we need to go this way, this way, this way, and this way. And so I saw that happen a couple times, whereas the people who understand that spatial aspect of it start to take over a little bit. And that can be unfun in certain situations. I will also say one other thing, which was a major con for me to this game, is that... And my nerd side is going to come out a little bit here. But as a computer programmer, mazes are a pretty common problem that you solve. It's not even a computer science thing, but there's just a strategy to maze solving called the right-hand rule. Basically, when you enter a maze, you treat it as if you're keeping your right hand on the wall at all times. And if you do that, you're basically recursively tracking through the entire maze until you get to the end. Now, there are ways to foil that, which is if there are loops in a maze, you're not guaranteed to traverse the entire maze using that strategy. And there are on a few of the maps. But I went through all the maps in this game, and with the exception of one, which is very much a loop. Almost all of the others, you can traverse the entire maze using that rule, with the exception of like one or two squares.
A couple of squares,
And I think that's a major flaw of this game. Now, granted, maybe not everybody knows that trick, but knowing that trick... I would do that every single time I played this game. I would go in and I would methodically go through the entire thing, because it wouldn't take that long if you know that you're going to end up at the exit eventually. The only way to combat that is for the person playing the DM role to intentionally hide the chests in the one or two squares on the map where they know you're not going to hit.
Given that that person knows how to do that.
Right, and that's not fun either, right? So It's nerdy, I will say, but that kind of killed this game for me.
Yes, I'll agree with that as well. But I will say, coming back to what we were saying first, if you're exploring it without that rule and everybody's kind of doing it, I kind of enjoyed the dynamic of people discussing things. And yes, there was some captaining going on, but I don't know, in the games that I played, there was a lot of interesting or excited conversation about where are we going to go? Are we totally lost now? And let's decide because the timer's ticking and let's go because our land's running out.
Right.
Which I thought was kind of fun. But with that said, I'll come back to if you get the feeling that the DM isn't on your side and facilitating this and you feel like you're in a competitive mode against it, I think that totally would kill the game and just leave you frustrated because it's frustrating enough just navigating the maze.
All right, Chris, you want to kick us off this
I'll
time?
start. All right, so it still feels weird saying this, but as board game reviewers, I've really tried to avoid using these board game reviewer cliche phrases as much as possible. A lot of people like to say things like, this game really outstays its welcome, or this game is too long for what it is, these cliche statements. And another one of these cliche statements, I'm going to use it, unfortunately, because I just feel like it applies so well in this case, is this game is more of an activity than it is a game. Have you heard people say that before?
Yeah.
I tend to hate it when reviewers say that, and now here I am doing it. But as I said, it feels appropriate. The puzzle of navigating through the cave is neat. I enjoyed it. Mm-hmm. I thought it was fun, figuring out where we've been. Like I said, I feel like you can do that. That feeling of being lost, like you said, Bill, and then figuring out where you are, I enjoyed that. Unfortunately, I just felt like the gamey parts of it, the semi-cooperative stuff and the cave stuff, if you're running it confrontationally, just got in the way. I was like, I don't want this crap. Just get it away from me. I just want to figure out how to go through the maze. To me, I think this game would be funnest if you had two people, one cave person and one person on the other side just trying to get out.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No
treasure, no winner. Just give me a puzzle. Let me see if I can find the treasure and get out. An activity. To me, the game here is not enough. It's so close, but it's not enough for me to want to keep this game. I'm going to give it a 3. It's just okay for me. I feel like it would get tired after a while because there's not enough game there to support it. So for me, it's going to fall on a 3.
Yeah, it's interesting that you described the activity versus game piece because I didn't really think through that a whole lot before this, but I think that's pretty valid. For me, what I think hurt this game the most is what I mentioned earlier, which is that I think that it is more or less solvable. And when it comes down to being an activity and not a game, if that activity is in 70 to 80% of cases solvable, or you can at least get pretty darn close unless the DM knows the trick and intentionally foils you, which is not especially fun either. I don't know. That really hurt this game for me. I ended up giving this one a 2. I just think that when I can approach a game and know exactly what I'm going to do every time, because there's a fairly guaranteed way to ensure that I win, it becomes not much of a game anymore to me. So I landed on a 2 for this one.
So I'm going to kind of agree with both of you and give it a number rating pretty quickly, and then I'm going to roll in right away into a follow-up session that I had, if that's okay. It's somewhere between 2 and 3. I was thinking I was going to give it a 3, so I'll give it a 3 as it's written in the manual, partly because you review the game as it's presented, right? And I especially don't like the fact that it presents as an adversarial game, because I think that just gives it a sour taste for everybody. Saying it out loud makes me feel more like it's a 2, just because of that in the rules. But I borrowed this game from Chris and took it home with me this weekend, and it was my eldest daughter's birthday. And so I used this game to play a Dungeons and Dragons session. And so
cool.
I played with my kids when they were really young. When they last played, they were like 5 and 7, and I found their D&D sheets and then brought them out. And so I actually bought little dice trays and new colored dice for them and put them in gift bags. So they had just killed a white dragon and sitting on a pile of treasure. I had them touch a saber that transported them outside of this Cave of Wonders, and there's a guy there that says you have to go in and get the treasures. We had a blast playing it all the way through. And then also at the chest I had a birthday present, so I gave her a birthday present.
That's awesome, Bill.
At every one of the chests. So Anyway,
love the D&D flair, man.
So to me, that's a sweet spot.
Yeah,
Right?
I totally agree. Like I said, the mechanism here is cool as crap. I think it's neat. I see the potential here. You could use this in escape room games or dungeon crawls even. A game like Gloomhaven or Tainted Grail or Seventh Continent, right? Like having some sort of thing where as part of the game you enter a cave and it's got this point of view thing going on. It's neat. The game surrounding this game, however, is just not that great, unfortunately. But the mechanism of the tunnel traveling is cool.
Cool. Well, where can we find Sidibaba?
Yeah, so this one is available at Noble Knight Games for as low as $12. Okay.
Wow.
All right.
Yeah, if this piques your interest at all, even if you're a DM in D&D and use it in adventures, I think that's totally valid.
I will say the art is really cool.
Art is cool. There's a lot of good things in this game. $12 might be worth a shot if you're intrigued. So you can get it on Noble Knight. If you do, remember, please use our discount code, GEMS21, and the coupon code FILLED. We'd appreciate it. You can also get it on BGG as well, 15 copies on there.
All right. Those are our thoughts on Sidibaba.
You are one of 4 automatons that have woken after 100 years of slumber. What you see is a world in ruin with no human left alive. However, in your hearts, you still have the wish and will of mankind. 100 years passed, but time has taken its toll, and in each of you, only fragments of that will are left. You find yourself with no choice but to follow the shadows that linger inside of you, and to fulfill this will before any of the other automatons.
The distant future, the year 2000.
But anyway,
Flight of the Conchords, if you've never listened to it.
Nailed it.
Nailed it. You did. That was awesome, Chris.
All right. Code of Nine, also known as Awakon, which stands for Old World and Code of Nine. That's how I actually heard about this game for the first time. Published in 2012 by Bakafire Party, Japan Brand, and Z-Man Games. At the time of this recording, its BGG ranking is 5,162. The designer of this game is Bakafire. So I always thought Bakafire was a publisher, and it is, but it's also the name of the designer. So Bakafire is a pseudonym for the Japanese indie designer Itu Shin Ito.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. And he has several published designs, most notably, the one he's probably the most famous for is Tragedy Looper.
Oh, yeah. Never played it. Heard of it.
I have it and have yet to play it, and I really want to because I think it sounds cool. But he does make very unusual, unique games for sure. So I heard about this one from another board game contributor by the name of Nick Minahan. So he has a channel on YouTube called Board Game Brawl. I haven't watched Board Game Brawl in a really long time, but I actually just checked again today, and he's still active, still going. He's really into these anime-style, Japan brand, like Japanime game style board games, which this is obviously no exception. I heard about it from him. He actually got a start on the Dice Tower and then branched out and kind of started doing his own thing, but I heard about this game from him. All right, so brief rule summary of Code of Nine. Code of Nine is a deduction game with worker placement. Believe it or not, as weird as that sounds.
Sort of deduction.
Definitely deduction, I think. Yeah. I'm calling it deduction worker placement. Let me convince you in the rules. So, in a lot of social deduction games, you're given a role, right? A secret role or an identity. You're a villager or a werewolf or whatever. In this game, you're not given a role, but you are given information in secret, okay? 2 pieces of information, every player. So in a 4-player game, every person has 2 pieces of information, so 1/4 of the puzzle. And you are trying to deduce what the other players at the table know that you don't know. And specifically, what you know are victory point scoring conditions. So there are 28 different victory point cards in the game, and 8 of those will be active at any one time. And again, like I said, it's all random. So just to give you a couple of examples, there are certain items that you collect in the games that are called statues, and typically they are worth 1 point. However, there may be a victory point card in play that makes all statues worth 3 points. Okay. However, somebody else might be holding a victory point card that says all statue points are negative points. So those statues that you think might be worth 3 points actually might be worth minus 3 points. There are other cards that say if you collect the least number of coins, which is another item in the game, you just lose. But there might be other cards in the game that are incentivizing you not to collect coins, right? So there can be some pretty interesting dilemmas and decisions and deductions that need to be made based upon what cards are in the game, and you're trying to figure that out. Okay, now that I've made my case for how this game is a deduction game, let me explain how the game is played. So as I mentioned, it's worker placement, so everybody has 3 worker placement pawns, and the game takes place over 5 rounds. Each round you'll place your 3 pawns, so you're going to get 15 actions in this game total. That's it. 15 actions, okay? In the first round, you have a certain block of action selection spaces that are available to you, and then after the first round, when you move into the second round, a new block of action spaces opens up, and then all action spaces prior to that are still available to be placed upon. So as the game progresses, you'll get more and more places where you can place your workers to do things. And I think it's also important to note that every single placement space is unique. They all do something different, which I think is really cool. There are 25 of them in total, and they all do something different. So as I said, you will continue through 5 rounds. You're placing your pawns to do things. I guess I should explain what some of the spaces do just briefly. So some spaces you'll place and you can collect things like coins or statues or books, which may or may not be worth anything based on the secret objectives in play. Some places will let you peek at other players' hidden information. So when you get your 2 cards, you put one in what is called the shoal and then one that's what's called the abyss. The abyss is a little bit harder to look at. There aren't as many places on the board where you can go to that let you look at those cards, but you can peek at those cards and get information that your opponents know. But typically in exchange for that, you're giving up the opportunity to collect items, but you're gaining information. Some places can be attack oriented where you can take a token from somebody or maybe give them a token that they don't want because you know it's bad. Some places can protect you from attacks. You can swap items in certain places. You can do all kinds of things in these worker placement spots. At the end of the 5 rounds, all of the secret victory point scoring cards will be revealed. We will then tally points, and we'll determine a winner. That's generally how you play Code of 9. It's really a very simple game. The hard part of teaching this game is just going through all the different locations and cards and just understanding what they do. But the gameplay itself is quite simple. So while the gameplay is very unique, one of the things that initially drew me to this game was the really unique theme, which was expertly read in the flavor text section. Or your automatons are basically your robots that have awoken after 100 years. Humanity is dead. They've long since passed. And you're using the will of humanity to try to piece together these fragments of memories between each other to figure out what happened to them and fulfill your destiny or something. I don't know. But it sounds cool, okay?
It does.
How well do you feel like that theme came through in the gameplay here?
Not at all. I think you explained the theme first time we played this, and I still didn't understand it after you explained it. But yeah, the theme is cool in isolation. Mm-hmm. When applied to this game, I feel like it almost makes the game more complicated than it actually is, because every one of the spaces on the board has a different name, and it's a weird name that has nothing to do with anything and doesn't affect the gameplay in any way, right? So, if anything, the theme muddies the game. It makes it more difficult to understand what you're doing when really the mechanics are quite simple.
It's definitely strongly anime themed and has a strong anime feel. These worker placement spaces have these epic names like the place where they went and stared upon the cliff and ended the world, and it's like, collect 2 tokens.
Right. Yeah.
It's just kind of ridiculous, right? But I'd hoped for more, because the theme is cool, right? But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, it is absolutely non-existent, and to give the gaming cliche, it is absolutely tacked on. And it's tacked on in a really orthogonal kind of way, because it does make it a little more confusing. So, yeah.
For sure.
It's crazy.
I will say, too, just quickly, I like the art. I think it looks cool. I think a lot of the creatures and the locations are weirdly named, and it's very weird, but I like anime-style art. I think it looks cool. I don't know how y'all felt about it, but I think it looks decent.
Yeah, I thought so.
I didn't mind the art. I don't feel like there is a whole lot of it, though. Like
the cards.
Yeah, I guess on the cards, which you only see at the very end of the game, right? But yeah, the board is pretty bare bones, right? Aside from all the long action space names.
Yeah.
It's pretty sparse.
Yeah.
That's true. In small print.
All right, well, enough of this theme crap. How do you guys feel about the gameplay? What'd you think?
So I feel like I have to defend my initial statement on the deduction element. There is a deduction element to this game, to be clear.
For sure.
The reason why I say it's sort of a deduction game is that you also have the opportunity through these worker placement spaces to just straight up look at the cards that are out there, right? So you don't have to deduce. You will waste time, potentially, trying to figure out what to do, but that's not always necessarily a bad idea, right? And one of the things that I liked about this game was that tension between, do I go for the spaces that give me information that's concrete, that I know for sure,
Right.
or do I spend more time doing that deduction piece and really trying to understand what other people are doing and how that's informing what scoring cards might be out there and focus on getting the things, right,
Yeah.
to score more points. Because information is an extreme amount of power in this game,
Sure.
right? And so knowing that one extra card that nobody else knows can make or break you in this game, potentially, right, depending on what the cards are. But I enjoyed that tension of trying to figure out how many of my actions do I budget towards trying to get more information versus actually accomplishing things.
But in a 4-player game, there isn't anything that only you know that nobody else knows except for your own cards. Anytime you look at somebody else's cards, they know that too.
Right. No, I don't mean only you know. I mean, I know it, but the other people who haven't taken the time to look at that card don't know it.
Sure.
Right.
So you and the person that owns the card knows.
Right. Yeah.
But in theory, you could figure out what they know just by paying attention to what they're doing, right?
Theoretically.
Yeah.
True, but some of that manifests later in the game, right? Because they could be waiting till halfway through before they start collecting the thing that they know to get because they're out searching for information, right? So it's a super interesting game. And truly, if you're going to learn every other card out there, it takes 6 of your 15 turns to learn all those cards. And probably more than that because there's an order element too, especially if you're going to look at the Abyss card, you need to go first because lots of people will want to look at the Abyss card. So that takes another one of your pieces to say, I'm going to go first next turn, so I guarantee that I'm going to get the Abyss card. It's just expensive to get all the information out there, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that y'all are saying looking at every piece of information. And I totally get what you're saying. Knowledge is power. It always is, right? But I think this game is very cleverly designed in the fact that if you're ever taking actions, for the most part, to learn something, you're not gaining anything. What good does it do me to spend half my actions to look at every single card and be like, okay, I know almost everything. And now I've learned that every coin generates a point for me. But I have no coins because I've been using all my turns to learn that coins are valuable and they're safe and there's no way that they can get me. And I'm behind, right? So I think it strikes an interesting balance between, sure, there's value in looking at some cards, but there's also some value in just deducing what you think people know from the way they're behaving, right? Like I remember there was one game we were playing, I knew books were good because everybody was going hard for books. And then I looked at a card and it told me books are worth plus something or another. And I was like, I didn't need to know. I already knew that, right? I could tell that people knew that they were good by the way that they were playing, right? So I guess the point I'm making is you don't necessarily have to try to look at every single person's card to have a good game and to play well and to win. Right.
Oh, yeah. I guess the point I was trying to make is there's a huge opportunity cost to make that effort. So, yes, there's going to be some level of darkness. I'm not advocating for that, but yes, I totally agree with that.
Yeah, and I was never saying you need to know all the information. I was saying it's not a pure deduction game, right? Because you can choose to spend time getting concrete information.
Sure.
And I like that element about the game.
Yeah.
Right?
I feel like another one of the strengths of this game is it does have a lot of replayability. Just based on the different numbers of combinations and permutations of victory point scoring conditions that can come into play.
Yeah, and they're not small changes either. They radically change the game.
Right.
Hugely
What you
change
need
the
to be
game.
doing.
As a matter of fact, there's one card in the game that you actually are trying to get the least points. You win if you have the fewest points at the end of the game. So you're actually playing counter to what you normally would be doing in the game.
On every other scoring card.
Right. But then again, if you're playing that way, or maybe you're intentionally taking things that are bad to lower your score, then somebody might start to wonder, is that card in play? You know what I mean? You start to wonder by deduction, right? Does that person have that card or not? But I do like that variety. Not to mention adding that to the fact that there are 25 unique worker placement spots that all do cool different things. Just adds to the replayability.
There's some really unique spaces on there that I haven't seen other worker placement games do as well. Like, there's 2 spaces on there where if 2 different players have collected these 2 different orbs, there's like a white orb and a black orb, and there's only one of each. And if 2 different players have collected those 2 things and they both choose to go to the same spot, the game just ends immediately.
They just end the game,
And then something happens, like they score points if something else happened. There's just a lot of really cool worker placement mechanics. I don't think we ever saw anybody actually do that because it's pretty risky.
Got close, though. But Bill almost did it, I think.
I was going to, but somebody stole it from me, I think.
Yeah. Just some of the ways that they've interwoven the different worker placement spots in this game. You know, I've played a lot of worker placement games.
Yeah, me too.
There were a couple spaces in this game that was like, oh, that's really neat. Like, I've not seen that happen before.
Super cool.
So I want to ask, given that there's 28 cards and that there is the possibility, like you're saying, that card's out there that totally reverses it and makes it negative, and if somebody puts that in their abyss, I could easily see where by the time you get to the end of the game that it might be a frustrating experience because you got no clues about that. Is that a possible con for this game, or do you think that's just a totally fair mechanic that card's in there?
I had it written as a con. Not for me, but one that I think is worth mentioning. I think you're right. I think people need to be aware that there is the possibility that you can play this game and you will just never see a card that could sink you. And if you're not able to deduce it, that it's in play, that could be frustrating to some people. I can see that. I totally do. That can happen to you. Again, I would argue that maybe you need to be on the lookout for that. But again, I think that would lead into another con I had written down. Again, not for me, but I think that's worth mentioning, is that people that have played this game before are going to have a big advantage over people who have not played before just by having knowledge of what can happen to you in this game.
Right.
It's kind of like Twilight Struggle or any game like that, any card-driven game. If you have a knowledge of the cards and you understand where it can go wrong, you are advantaged by knowing how to avoid pitfalls and danger, right? You should know that about this game.
Yeah, for sure. I was reading through some of the reviews on BGG, and that's one of the top things about this game, right? Is that, well, I played this game, and then, the cards came out at the end, and everything was reversed from what I thought it was, and I just lost the game outright. And that can definitely happen. I think that could be a con. If you want to have perfect information and be able to put everything together and play your best game and win because of it, that might not happen in this game, right? You might think you have everything lined up, and then it just turns out there's a card out there that, just kidding, you did the worst
you lose.
out of everybody, right? Or it's impossible for you to win because this card isn't there, right? I think expectations are key in any game that's like this, right? And that would be frustrating to me in a lot of games, but coming into this game with that expectation of, well, that might happen, but I'm going to have fun anyway doing it, and if it happens, it happens. And that's not for everybody, right? And it's not even for me in every game that's like that. But for this particular game, it didn't particularly bother me. Maybe it was because I won this game a lot. I don't know. And I'm not even saying that I won it a lot because I did the best, right? It could have been because that random card came out that just so happened to help me, right? It can go both ways, but it didn't seem to affect me as much, I think, for this one.
All right. Shall we move on to final thoughts?
Sure.
Bill, why don't you kick us off this time?
Okay. Well, I'll come back to that. Do I know if a game's going to be good when I look at it? Because in this episode, I thought Sidibaba would be good. I thought Time and Space was going to be good, and it wasn't. I would think this one on paper, when it's telling me I have to look at all these cards and know what they do, and there's a list, like you're saying, of 25 or 28, and keep all those things in my head and know what the possibilities are of that list, is just overwhelming to me. And I really came into this thinking I am not going to like this game. But somehow, just with the way the mechanics work out, I found it a lot of fun. I mean, I really want to play it again and kind of build that arsenal in my head of learning how these cards work together, because it's one of those games that has a magic to it that I think is surprising to me, really. So yeah, I enjoyed every game, and I will say I was surprised at the fact that I enjoyed it. I do feel it's got a little bit of a random nature to it that in some games I really don't like, because I don't like a game to feel like it's a total coin toss at the end, and I know this has a component of that, but I also feel like if you played a bunch of games, if you get good at it, you could win at it. So anyway, I'm going to give it, I think, a 4, but if it came out, I would love to play it again.
Yeah. Nice. So for me, if you listen to our review on Heimlich & Co., I said something along the lines of, I really enjoy thoughtful, quiet deduction games. And this game is no exception. Don't particularly like the ones where you're screaming and accusing each other, but you're just evaluating the board and trying to figure out, what do people know here? And this game has that in spades. I really enjoyed not only trying to figure out how to maximize my points based upon what I know, which may or may not be valuable at all, but also figuring out what other people know. If I'm taking a lot of statues and Jason sees me doing that and he's not, start to wonder a little bit about my statues. You know, should I start passing them off? Should I look at Jason's card, right? Try to figure out what he knows that I don't know. I enjoyed that. I thought there was meaningful deduction going on here. I feel like the combination of cards and the many different places that you can go on the board that lead to all different kinds of shenanigans that you can perform on your opponents. Lots of replayability here. Love the deduction. This game is excellent, in my opinion. I really like this game. I'm going to give this game a 5. As far as deduction goes, this is my top 2 deduction games, right up there with Awkward Guests, if you're familiar with that game.
Great game.
These are my 2 favorite. This game, really, for me, I mean, I like Heimlich & Co., but it just blows it out of the water. There's kind of different games, but have similar feels, and to be honest, I'm not even sure why I would play Heimlich & Co. again after this game, so I might end up getting rid of it. It's just so much better. Great game. Highly recommend it. Check this game out. For me, a 5.
Cool. Yeah, I think I agree with you, Chris, and we talked about this when we reviewed Heimlich & Co. I did not review Heimlich & Co. favorably, and I think it was because of feeling as though even though the deduction element was there was still a lack of control. And for whatever reason in Heimlich & Co., I just couldn't figure out what other people were trying to do. In this game, the amount of replayability that it has, combined with the fact that I feel like you have control over your destiny to a degree. Obviously, there's the end game piece, and you might just not know a card that's out there, but there's an objective, a clear objective that you're trying to accomplish, which I feel like is absent in a lot of deduction games, right? You're trying to kill the other team or whatever, but it ends up you're just shouting at each other. There's an objective to this game. There are certain things that are valuable and certain other things that are not valuable, and you have to budget and spend your time and your actions that you have in order to accomplish the thing. But you also have control over how much information you choose to know and how much information you deduce. And I don't know, that balance that this game manages to find in all of those things, fantastic deduction game, in my opinion. I really enjoy this one. I think it's becoming, like you said, one of my favorite deduction games that I've played thus far. I also gave this one a 5. Really enjoyed this one. So many different combinations of ways that this game can play out, and I really enjoyed that part of it.
Hysterically so. I remember we just started looking through the secret objectives and just laughing hysterically for seeing, like, what if this card came out with this card, and just seeing how it can go wrong for people.
Yeah, I wish we could just, like, read out the list, and that wouldn't be boring, but it would be, so we won't.
I mean,
there are a lot of good ones on there.
Yeah. Things the game will do to you that's just really mean. If you don't pick up on the fact that that card is in the game, is really funny.
Well, it's funny when you talk about it being a deduction game. Certainly in the first few rounds, there are people who are operating on really bad information, right? So,
right.
So they may be,
and you know it.
Right. Well, so you may know it or you may not know it, because you may say, "Hey, they're getting books," and you don't know that there's another card out there that makes books really horrible, right? or nobody at the table may know that the books are horrible till much later in the game. So it's an interesting counter dynamic, right? It is really funny when you know it and they don't, for sure. But
and we didn't even talk about bluffing. But I mean, that's another element of this game.
Sure.
Right? If I know that books are a terrible thing to be collecting, maybe I'll collect a book at the beginning of the game, throw some people off, and then use an action later on and trade it off to somebody else, right?
Right.
Hand it off to Bill, right?
Yeah.
Who already has 2.
Exactly.
Enjoy, you're right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's great stuff.
All right, well, where can we find Coda 9?
All right, so good news. There are several copies of this available at Noble Knight for as low as $20. That's a steal for this game, folks.
I'm in.
I might have to pick up a copy of this one.
Yeah, if this sounds at all interesting to you, get it there. Great game. Also 15 copies available on BGG as well.
Cool. All right. Well, that's a wrap on Code of Nine.
Yes.
As always, we want to thank you guys for joining us for this unusual games episode of Hidden Gems. If you like what we're doing here, please remember that it's a huge help to us to give us a rating or review on your favorite podcast platform, or to follow us on one of our many social media platforms. Check out the BGG Guild if you want to interact with us or share a game that you feel is a hidden gem. And if you're so inclined, please consider supporting the show over on our Patreon at patreon.com/hiddengemspodcast. Until next time, I'm your host, Jason.
This is Chris.
And this is Bill.
Thanks for listening.
This episode of Hidden Gems, number 17, was recorded in Raleigh, North Carolina on September 27th, 2021. Join us again in 2 weeks when we talk about a couple of games from one of the legends of modern board game design, Martin Wallace. Hidden Gems is produced and edited by Chris Alley, Cameron Lockey, and Jason Yanchuleff. Our Board Game Geek Guild is monitored and managed by honorary Hidden Gems team member, Ghidorah. Our show's logo was illustrated by designer and artist Katelyn Nieto. Check out her work on Instagram at It's Katelyn Nieto. We would love to hear from you. Feel free to join the discussion on our many social media accounts. You can find us on Facebook at Hidden Gems Board Game Podcast, Instagram at Hidden Gems Podcast, and Twitter at Hidden Gems Board. Disagree with one of our reviews? Have something you want to say about one of our games we discussed today? You can also make your voice heard on our Board Game Geek Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, Guild number 3847. Once again, thank you for joining us on Hidden Gems, and until next time, fellow gem seekers, enjoy your games and enjoy your search.
Clock, during which they can move as quickly. Damn it, Chris.
Milk mustache.
Egg mustache.
Delicious.
Hidden Gems is produced and edited by Chris Alley, Cameron Lockey, and Jason Yanchuleff. However,
What in the world was that?
I don't know. I've never pronounced that before.
Jason Yanchuleff?
Yanchuleff. Like
How long have you-
Rolowitz or
How long
whatever.
have you What is that?
How many Ramos gin
There's
fizzes have
too
you had?
many
Oh my word.
letters in this thing.
Bill's 3 beers deep. All right, try again.
Get
out. You don't listen to the credits, do you, Bill?
I do listen. No, not anymore. You're right. I don't.